everyone, and welcome. This session is being recorded. My name is Stephanie Lassiter, and I will be the moderator for this ADEIL conference session. And I also thank Jacqueline for joining me as for our technical support and all things that Jacqueline does. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us for session 3A, Creating Belonging in the Online Classroom. Please welcome Dr. Misty Resendez. Misty, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much. Super excited to be here today with each of you. This is going to be more of a conversation. We're going to chat, we're going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to give you some tools, and we'll find a way for you to get my presentation in case we don't get through everything, but I'm going to try my best. So my name is Dr. Misty Resendez, and I have been teaching higher education for a lot of years, and I've been in the online space before COVID, and so just really used to being able to navigate online. And what does that look like to create an environment where belonging is important? And I like to use the word belonging because a lot of times we get caught up in the diversity, we get caught up in the words inclusion, but we don't really do really well when we talk about creating belonging, because that's different than diversity. So excited to have this conversation. Just quickly, some things that I'm going to go over is really talk about what is the concept of online belonging and why is it even important? And how does creating the sense of belonging, how does it impact our students? We're going to talk about some different techniques that you can use. This is not going to be, not one technique is going to be going to work for everybody, right? So when we talk about that, it's just meeting individuals. Use what tools are going to benefit you. If it doesn't apply to you, then leave it. That's okay. But there's going to be hopefully something in here that you will take away, or maybe just even begin to think about differently. I'm going to talk a little bit about empathy and why empathy is important and how to create allies and what does that mean, especially in an online space. And my goal for this whole entire time that we have together is just really to have some actionable strategies to continue to promote belonging in the online classroom. So what does inclusion and belonging look like in the online classroom? Come off the mic. You can use the chat. Just what does it look like when we think about belonging and inclusion in an online classroom? Anyone like to share? Again, please feel free to come off chat, or off mute, use the chat. So thank you. We have a response. We have one is there is space for all voices. Feeling comfortable in your own skin. Yes. Feeling valued and connected. Yes, these are all very good. Inclusion. Students feel safe to be who they are. Giving them a sense of being heard. That's a good one, Twani. I'm going to come back to that, of being heard. That's different, right? What does that even mean to be heard, especially in the online setting? I know sometimes that when we're teaching online, it could be synchronous or it could be asynchronous, and those matter, right? But how can we still show up and feel like the student belongs? So we're really going to dive into and talk about that. I appreciate your participation and just in sharing. Again, please feel free to use the chat throughout our time together. So when I talk about belonging, let's talk about what is it? Belonging is the feeling of being a part of something, right? And that because I'm a part of this, it matters to others, right? It's created through inclusion, which consists of intentional acts. So somebody intentionally reached out to me, somebody intentionally, welcomed me. So when I get my roster of online students and I know who's going to be in my upcoming class, the first thing I do is I see, have I had this student before? Is this a new student? And I'm very intentional about reaching out, and I create an individual email to everybody welcoming them to this space, right? Hey, hey, Danielle, or hey, John, or, whoever it is, Darius, Carl, welcome to class. Or, hey, it's nice to have you again in another class. Looking forward to our time together, telling them to, reach out and, review the syllabus, what's going on. It's very intentional. So many students have responded back saying, I've never had one of my faculty members reach out to me in a personal email. Sometimes they're just, through Canvas or Brightspace or, D2L, depending on what learning platform that you're using. But really just taking that time to be intentional, creating the space. So I'm going to talk about how do we create a space where the student feels like they matter because they're a part of this group. So why is belonging even important, right? Well, when we talk about belonging, it is a fundamental need. Every one of us humans need to feel this need that we belong, right? It's a need for social connection, right? So if we look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we know belonging is in there and it's one of our foundational needs. If we think about babies when they're born and they're premature and they have to stay in the hospital a little bit longer so they can fully develop. They're in the neonatal unit. They have volunteers. They have people who come and actually physically touch them. And if they don't have the touch that they need, it's called failure to thrive, right? So these babies do not develop physically like their bodies are supposed to if they're not getting physical touch. This is just something that is embedded in each and every one of us to feel this human connection to others. When there's a sense of belonging, people have shared identity, shared values, interdependence, and they feel comfortable being true to themselves. Really just being able to show up, being authentically who they are. It is very vital to performance, especially when we're talking about like further developing one's education and their well-being. Because if I'm stressed, right, like I don't feel like I belong, am I here, am I capable of doing this work? It seems like so many other students are doing so well with their discussions, or, nobody's asking questions. Sometimes, depending on how your course is made, I always have a discussion where it says, questions, or praises, or, whatever, sharing is caring. Like if they have questions, maybe other students have that same question. Sometimes those are left blank the whole entire semester, or the time that we have our class together. So, just creating that space and using it myself as a faculty member to engage the students so they know like, hey, this is a place that we can come together and share praises, or, something that went well this week, or what kind of questions does somebody have that they may have. Like if I get a private email, I'll put it in the sharing is caring. Hey, just wanted to share this question that I received, students, and here would be my response to that. I see something in the chat. Psychological safety. Yes, that is a good one. That's another reason why belonging is important, is to create that psychological safety, which I'm going to talk a little bit about as well. I really wanted to start off our time together just really bringing in this quote by Maya Angelou, who is an amazing poet. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget what you made them feel. And even if I only have my students for 5 weeks, 8 weeks, if it's a 15, 16-week course, even if that's the only time I have them throughout their entire educational journey, right? Or any just connection that they will have in life. Like I may never cross paths with this individual again. I want them to know that they were valued. I want them to know that what they said is important. I want their experience to be meaningful. And I want to make sure I do what I have to create that space, because I think that's important. So in order for us to truly understand inclusion, in order for us to truly understand what does it mean to create belonging, we have to totally understand exclusion. So therefore we don't act on this, and that our behaviors aren't exclusive to anybody. So when we talk about exclusion, it could look like this, right? Any kind of behaviors or actions that alienate others. So are we doing something, thinking about, I know a lot of us might be teaching in different platforms when we're talking about online classes. So are we allowing a student to feel devalued? Are we being dismissive, ignoring an individual based on their difference? Maybe an individual is struggling with an accessibility issue, or maybe the individual is struggling because this is a newer concept for them, and we just kind of ignore that because of maybe a difference that they have. Maybe we can tell that this is an English as a second language student, and are we doing something that is not giving as much value as we would to somebody else? I had a student that I tell English was not their primary language, based on some of the writing of the papers or the APA, or, there was something that was really raising a red flag for me. And I asked the student to, like, hey, can we please just have a Zoom call? Can we please meet? I would just love to just take some time to talk with you. I said it would only be like 5-10 minutes, but if you want to go longer, that's fine. But I just want to have 5 or 10 minutes with you. And I really poured into the student on, like, I want to give you as many tools as possible, but you tell me how I can best support you so you can be successful in this class. Well, it came out that the student was actually using their phone. It was an English as a second language speaker, but they were using their phone to do papers. And so they weren't really able to type their papers like they would want to. So throughout our little time together, we came up with a plan in order for the student to be successful throughout the remainder of the course. But there's little things that we can do. We can go on and just ignore it, right? And fail them and like just give some feedback. Like, I already gave you this feedback before. One time I was auditing some of our associate faculty when we were doing reviews, and I can tell when faculty ignore, like, I already gave you this feedback and you're not implementing it in your paper. Like, you've received this feedback before. You're not implementing feedback that I provided, but wouldn't give any other feedback to the student throughout their paper. So where is the touch points? Are you dismissing, or are you devaluing, or even ignoring that a student might be struggling with something? That to me is exclusion. An intentional lack of personal connections that are respectful, collaborative, and transparent, right? I've actually had a faculty member respond to a student with some very derogatory terms based off of them being English as second language. It's apparent that English is not your first language. Your writing is, it was really bad. It was a really bad statement. Like, you really need to improve on your writing. This is not going to be acceptable in this course. Well, where's the support? That doesn't make me want to try to do any better because I don't feel any personal connection there. It's almost degrading that my language is not perfect, right? Or practicing tokenism. That's something that we can also do well, right? Where we're doing something only to prevent criticism and the appearance that people are being treated fairly. So I want you just to think about a time where either you experienced a sense of belonging, like you were like, wow, this felt really good. What did it feel like? Maybe you didn't experience belonging in a group, or maybe you witnessed somebody else to like really struggle to fit in. What was that experience like? What happened? How did those experiences maybe shape you? It doesn't look like I can do breakouts. Oh, I can. We're going to just do 2 minutes in a breakout. So if you want to take,
I can make the breakout rooms. Yeah. How many breakout rooms did you want?
Just enough for like maybe 4 people in a room, 3 to 4 people in a room. If you want to take a screenshot with your phone to take these little questions in your room with you. And then we're just going to have about 3 to 4 minutes just to chat. I really want you to share about one of these experiences. So yeah, even just for us to start these conversations, this is something that you can begin. So take this activity and do it with your group or your team as well. Or even with students, right? And let them share about this time, because what it does is it really helps us to develop empathy, because at one point we probably all have been excluded. Like, we all felt like we didn't probably fit in 100%, or that we didn't belong, right? Think about, like, from when we're little kids, sometimes we start to experience this, like if you were selected to be a part of the dodgeball or kickball or whatever the game was that you get to pick your partner. A lot of those experiences have really taught me how to not allow one party to have all of the control, right? How can we be more intentional on how we set up groups or do different things like that? But when we have experienced belonging, it really allows us to continue to cultivate, right? And to build these relationships and to really have great experiences. But we do have to have some intentionality. So I appreciate, and if you want to share that, if anybody has a key takeaway from this discussion that you had in your group, you can come off mute, or you can use the chat just to share what that experience was like, or maybe how it has shaped you moving forward, because you have felt excluded before. Okay, well, feel free to use the chat. We'll be checking throughout the presentation. But again, that's why I really use this activity, is really just to remind people what it feels like to be the good part of belonging. And maybe when you witness somebody struggling to fit in, what are some things that we can do moving forward to create this belonging? So I'm going to just talk about some best practices to use in order to start creating this belonging in the workplace. Remember, this is a feeling that somebody will experience, and there's intentional acts behind that we have to do. So the first thing that we want to do is we really want to focus on emotional connections. And this can include our use of emotional intelligence. This is humor, this is sarcasm, paralanguage, and self-disclosure. So what are some things that you can do, right, to continue to encourage these emotional connections? Humor is always fun. There's different ways that you can, pay attention to self-disclosure. Sometimes reading students' papers, you might hear that they're struggling with something, or if you have like discussion boards that have weekly check-ins or weekly recap from their learning, you can really tap into that if you are being socially aware, right, of what maybe somebody might be sharing. So because of that, I've been able to email students directly, hey, I read in your paper that you were experiencing this, or in your weekly recap, I picked up on this, is, I just hope everything is going okay for you, or how can I support? Sometimes I might give links to different events or student services or programs. Again, it's all depends on what type of scenario might be occurring. Use humor, right? We're in a learning environment, right? I think it's really important to just create a space where people can like relax. Sometimes it could be a very scary situation for somebody to, go to school online. We all sometimes wear multiple hats, so this might not be the only thing that they're doing. And so I try to remove stress, and I try to make this not a scary place. So sometimes I'll just put in like a Monday motivation videos, or some Monday humor or Friday humor, just something to really kind of make it more of a relaxed environment. Encourage the use of bold, underline, emojis, anytime that it could be appropriate, like especially like if it's a week, I always get on there and try to do stuff on weekends just to show that I am a real person. I'm not a robot that's, operating the course. Announcements to praise and motivate students. I think that's huge. Hey, students, it was so much fun reading your introduction discussion boards. I love learning more about each of you, different things like that. And again, the motivation, sometimes I'll just find like 2 or 3 minute videos to embed for Monday. I always do a Monday motivation announcement for students, because you never know what the students might be experiencing. I build in audio and video where possible, right? So just so they can hear and see each other. There's so many cool little apps that you can use where students, sometimes I'll have them, instead of typing their discussion response, that they have to use the video, and then they'll record like a 2-minute video responding. It allows us to connect better to one another, and that we know we're real. It's a real life course versus just busy work, students getting online and responding to discussion boards. It can kind of get a little boring sometimes. So I just find that that's a cool way to engage. I'll post little videos up there. I try to be very short, sweet, and to the point. I try not to make something extremely long for the students, especially if we're not having a face-to-face class. Another thing is developing community cohesion for your students. What are some ways that you can really create community around your class, right? There's some ways that you can do it with greetings and just referring to students by name. Sometimes I'll put students in like a group, like, hey, students, why don't the 3 of you work on this assignment together? Why don't you, 3 do this? Just really try to encourage social interaction. Again, I use a lot of different online tools to be able to do that as well, where students can get online and respond to their little videos. I always ask them in their discussion, share your LinkedIn, or, some kind of a social profile, maybe their workplace website, just so people can see that who they are, who's in my class with me. Just really getting to know each other better. And again, like I said, I do this early on. I reach out to my students, depending on when I get my roster well in advance, especially I do it before the course opens. And I'm like, your course will be opening on this day. You can expect to, take some time to review the syllabus. Sometimes I even download the syllabus in a PDF and attach it for the students. Just again, anything I can do to really relax their anxiety about the unknown, about what they're going to experience. I see some chats here. Ooh, I love the midweek motivations and holistic Fridays. Oh, I like that. I would like to know a little bit more about what consists of holistic Fridays. If you want to share in the chat, what do you do in that? Yes, very good. The next is the interaction intensity. So what level of interaction do you expect to have with your students? Right, so I do a lot, and I probably do more than I probably should, but I do a lot. So I get in there and building up, even though the course may not have opened yet, like I'm inserting, hey, don't forget about Grammarly, don't forget about these academic writer, or if there's a certain topic that we're talking about, hey, check out this website, or let's say I'm teaching a human resource class or a leadership class. I'm like, and I hear students are asking about, they're interested in human resources. I say, hey, do you know as a student, you can register for a student membership for SHRM, and here's all their amazing benefits that come along with that. So because I'm, I normally teach courses that I feel pretty confident in, then I pull in other resources to really help connect the students to other resources, because if we were in person, I would be doing the same types of things. So I want these online students to have those same exact experiences. If I know of a conference coming up or a virtual setting that the students may be able to take part of, I share those types of resources. I run events for the Center for Women's Leadership through Forbes, and I always share like, hey, did you know there's these free events coming up, or Toastmasters, right? Like I really am intentional about picking up on things to connect students. So throughout the week, I will put in all kinds of different articles or tools that will just really help support their learning during that time together. And then just again, finding these social tools to just make communication easier. I always ask the students, please make sure that you subscribe to announcements. I use this tool very often. I do a virtual meet and greet. Like I will post up like, hey, I'm going to do a virtual meet and greet. It's totally optional if you want to join, but just this is a space for you to come in and just meet your peers, meet me, ask any kind of questions. And then I, depending on the time and the students, I'll go through like some really important key highlights of the course. And sometimes it's just for fun. We just have, little chit chat and kind of talk and get to know each other better. And then depending on how long my course is, I'll have several of those throughout our time together. Knowledge and experience. I think it's important to really make sure that the students are able to connect the resources that I'm putting into the announcements. I don't want them to check out and think like, oh, this is too much information. What does this matter? She's just blowing my inbox up with announcements. I really try to connect it to really important aspects of their lives. So when they're doing homework or, whatever their assignment is, I really try well to connect it and circle back so the students can really make sense of what it is that they're doing. Model ways to engage with the content of the course through various tools. And again, please feel free to use the chat and share what online tools are you using that you would encourage other faculty members to use with their students, something that you found useful. Instructor involvement. This is key because a lot of this comes back on us, right? Like it's our role to really create this environment and an opportunity for others to learn. So it's important, I feel, to create a synthesis, right? Like responding back, like when a student posts, hey, great job, of really tying back, of summarizing something I heard them learn and connecting it back to what they're saying versus just using a blanket like grading response, like great job responding to this post this week. Good work engaging with your peers. I don't know, something very simple, because I feel like the students then check out. The students' feedback tends to be They're not reading this. This is busy work. So then they don't feel as they connected or as they belong. You know, making like comments within their post or within their paper stating this is a great resource. Have you checked into this resource, or have you read this book? Or just really totally being involved with your students. Again, what would that experience be like if that student made that comment in class? You would have piggybacked and followed up off of that. So I think the instructor involvement is going to be key, especially if we're trying to create this sense of I've been heard. When we talk about belonging and we're creating spaces of belonging, we want to feel like we're connected, right? We want to have that whole community. We want to see that we want to be seen and we want to be heard. So being seen, does the instructor see me as a live person and as a human, as somebody who matters, right? And then when the students, you'll see a big difference on their involvement. When you're involved, you see a big difference on their involvement in the course as well. Because now they feel some type of accountability versus nobody knows I'm even here. And especially if they're struggling early on, when you're able to pick up on this a lot sooner than, you know, towards midterms or, you know, the midpoint of a course when you're looking and you're evaluating like, oh, you know what, this person's really kind of fallen off, or what's happened to them. So it does take time, and we have to be intentional about this. So what are some ways that we can create to show we care? Right? Like as faculty, we are human, you are human, and we know you care. So just, you know, talking again, depending on if it's asynchronous or synchronous classroom, sometimes it's really cool to create a playlist of some songs, like as you're getting on, like if I'm doing like a meet and greet, or if I'm doing an online class where I'm waiting before our class starts, I'll have some music playing, right? I like to get the students hype and excited, you know, to dive into our conversation. I normally have some type of a question or, you know, that they can already start posting in responses in the chat, just to kind of get people prepared before I just dive into whatever it is that I'm going to talk about. You can use a check-in like a rose and a thorn format, drop emojis. Emojis are a really good way just to kind of emotionally check in with our students to kind of see what's going on. I always pull my chat when I'm done with my calls, but I, you know, will also try to make note, like I always have somewhere to jot notes down during our time. And then I'll put a note like check in with Jose, or check in with Deborah, or something like that, because I would see their emoji maybe wasn't as something that maybe was sad or something like that, that I can say, hey, Deborah, thanks for joining class today, or thanks for, you know, joining our weekly check-in, and notice that you dropped this emoji in the chat. Just wanted to check on you, let you know that I'm here to support you. I'm a tool for you to be successful in this course. Let me know if there's anything I can do. I don't probe. I'm not asking them to share with me what's going on, but just letting them know that I noticed, I seen what, you know, I'm responding to what I seen, and I'm here. If there's a resource I can do, or if there's anything I can do to be, you know, to help you, then that's what I'm here for. And then again, another thing is build time in for announcements, for free time for students to interact with one another. So if your class is just using online and no classes where you meet together, I always allow them to respond, or I'll ask them to respond in the announcement. It's just a way for them to further engage with one another. Like I'll say, maybe it's a Saturday. Hey, happy Saturday, students. What's your favorite cereal? Or, you know, just something for them to kind of connect. Or what's your favorite leadership author? Share your favorite leadership resource book with your peers. Or what's your favorite motivational quote or your leadership quote, and share that with your peers. And then the peers will respond one to another. So again, it creates to me those little small breakout sessions that we would have in an in-class opportunity. Okay, I'm seeing the chat, so let me check this real quick. Yes, hold open chats. These are all good. Self-care tips motivation, goal setting. Well, oh, so for Holistic Fridays, thank you for sharing this. Self-care tips, motivation, goal setting, wellness, coping with stress, time management skills. Yes, I like that. Canva, Loom, Screencast-O-Matic, or some other resources. I love Canva. So great. Keep sharing the different resources that you have. I have some too that I'm going to get to at the end. So some other ways to show that we care. I think it's important that we model vulnerability, right? Share your own uncertainties. Sometimes I'll have a student maybe post something in the discussion and I might respond back like, hey, this is a great topic that you shared, or this is a great idea. I would love to learn more about this. We have a lot of military students, and so sometimes they'll use certain terms or certain things that they do in the military. And so I'll ask for more because I'm not familiar with the military's leadership. So I'll ask more questions like, hey, can you provide an example of what does this look like, or what does this mean? Or can you please share about what this looks like in your industry? I don't know how all industries work, or like leadership in a CPA might look different than in a human resources space, right? So I just always, and it encouraged them because they like to share their story. Students, like any individual, any human, wants to share a little bit more about themselves. So it really gives them that space to show that they matter. Encourage students to respond to one another. Again, using that chat feature, messaging one another is important. I always also encourage like, hey, did you know that there's 2 of you in our class that are working, like in my discussion, I'll say to both, like I'll respond and I'll put at like, or I'll create a new one that says, Jose and Deborah, did you notice that both of you work in the same industry? And have either of you experienced this type of a leadership, or, you know, something that can bring the 2 of them together, because I've seen similarities in maybe their discussion post. So just thinking about ways that you can do that. Having a Google Doc, or other types of resources that students can go to and link, or I think that's important. I do it in an announcement. Again, it depends on where I'm teaching and what types of resources that the students might have access to. I'll create different ways for them to have an ongoing, either, you know, like a Google Doc or something that they can get all of the resources that we're connecting together. I think it's important that we establish norms, right? So thinking about like, hey, students, this is what's expected. I think it's important to do this at the beginning of the class, right? And then sometimes things need to change, right? So I get in there right away. Before the class even opens, I have an announcement of what the class norms are, what's expected. Again, I always tell the students I'm here and I want you to be successful. So this is what's important in order for us to be successful together in this class. That, you know, learning means all of us coming together and sharing. I also ask students, you know, if they don't have a profile picture, I say, hey, please post a video or a picture so we can see who you are. Asking students to share their pronouns. Some of them have their pronouns. I'm very intentional about ensuring that when I'm responding to students, I use their name or I use the pronouns that they've identified with. If they have not identified their pronouns, I do not ask them to unless they feel comfortable. I never want a student to feel like they're being pressured, that they have to share pronouns or that they have to come out in that type of a way and identify. So I leave it completely up to the student, but I try to eliminate pronouns as much as possible and use their name if they have not identified what pronouns they want to be referred by. Decide if students should speak up or if they should use raise their hand feature. Again, thinking about if you're having an online class where you are all meeting together, it's important to establish that, because other times, maybe if they don't raise their hand, they can come off mute all the time and then they can pretty much dominate the space and it wouldn't allow others an opportunity to speak up. And some students, I think it's important to say, hey, Johnny, I see that you raised your hand. There's a few other hands I'm going to get to, and I'm going to come back to you because maybe Johnny's been talking quite a bit throughout the class time that day. So just think about ways that you can set these norms is really important. telling the students to be intentional about being present, and really paying attention when we're when we're hosting a class or we're hosting a chat time together, by taking notes. Again, sometimes when we're on, Zoom, we can have our, screens off and not really be engaged. So just set the tone and say, that we have a limited time together and I just really would like to use the best of our time. Please engage. Things like that. Promoting engagement, right? There's different ways that you can promote engagement in the online setting. Giving clear instructions, like how I did. I was like, take a picture. I always tell the students, hey, make sure you take a picture before you go into your breakout, so you can have the questions, or I'll push it through the message. If I'm the one running it, then I'll like, here's your questions to talk about in your chat, check on them. I normally float around in the Zooms. So if I'm doing a breakout with the students, like I'll jump from one room to another just to check in on them as if I was in the classroom, right? I kind of do the same thing when I'm doing a face-to-face class, like, just hearing, because sometimes they have questions or, just to kind of keep them on task of some things that they should be discussing or focusing on during their time together. And I think it's also important to give students stretch breaks for sessions that are longer than 40 minutes. If we're doing an online class, sometimes I've had classes as long as 4 hours. I think it's very important to kind of take those 10 minutes. I use them normally, I build it in as reflection time, which students can use the bathroom, walk around, get some fresh air before they come back. So I always build in that time. I normally play music. I still stay on screen throughout that time, because sometimes students will ask questions or, they'll have something that they want to talk about instead of going on the break. I also think it's very important to provide support and access for all. A lot of our programs require accessibility checks, so they're going through a lot of that. But if we're using other stuff to supplement our classrooms, such as some different online tools, because there's a ton of them, just make sure that they are available for all. Accessibility, like screen readers or, phones, if somebody's using it on their phone, or whichever way, that the language, or if you're using transcription services, all of that, just make sure whatever access tools that you're using, any tools that you're using, are accessible to all. Sometimes I also think it's important to describe any slides or any posts that you have, is, especially if somebody might be using different devices. One thing that I noticed in the DEIB space, some people will come on Zoom and describe what they're wearing. Hi, I'm, your speaker today, and, I have long curly black hair. I wear dark glasses, because it gives an opportunity for others to really visualize what, something that they might not be able to see on the screen. So there's lots of different ways that you can get creative to ensure that the different collaboration tools or the things that you're using create accessibility for everybody to learn and engage in those programs.
Dr. Resendez,
yes.
We have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to mention I promoted the event coming up. Just drop that in the chat. If you want to speak to that.
Yes, thank you. I will ensure that you all get my slides, because I just have a lot to share. But
good stuff. This is good.
Thank you. So I am the chair for the Center for Women's Leadership through the Forbes School of Business at UAGC, and we have free events. And this week, this Thursday, we have Dr. Joelle Alafuate, who is going to come and talk to us about looking in, exploring in the rearview mirror. So looking about our blind spots and unconscious bias that we might have. So it starts with us, and we have to remove our own bias that we might have against others. It's a free event. Just register to join. We have a LinkedIn page. So that's just a good way to stay connected, because we host 3 free events a month. There's just a lot of resources, opportunities. We have YouTube videos. We've had dynamic speakers that you can even use to put into some of your courses to say, hey, check out this, and then maybe do a little discussion off of it. Free resources, just sharing it with you. And then I will get you my presentation as well, because there's a lot more in here. So I just want to thank you all for coming. I know it's 1:15, so Thank you so much for coming and just making this a topic that matters. So I appreciate that.
Dr. Resendez, thank you so much. I think you brought us some great reminders and new information. I think we get a little burnout sometimes as online faculty, and we need those reminders that tone and presenting ourselves as engaged is everything to those marginalized learners who may not feel like they belong. I think a lot of our students have imposter syndrome. So you gave us some great reminders, and I'm really glad you're going to spoil us by giving us your presentation. Put me on the list.
Yes.
Do you need us to put our email addresses in the chat?
Yeah, I don't know how I can get it. So if you can put it in the chat, if you want to put your email, or just email me directly. And then I will send it. If you email me, I'll send you my slides. So my email, I believe, is in the chat. So just copy that. That's the easiest way, because I know this will cut off and there's more sessions for you all.
And just a reminder, this whole meeting has been recorded, so they will be posting it most likely on their website in the next few weeks as well.
Great. Well, thank you all very much.
Thanks for joining us, and please join us at 1:30 to listen to our keynote speaker, Dr. Rena Paloff. Thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Misty Resendez. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.